Let's move to our conversation. Joining me virtually now from the UK for an in-depth look into the Russia-Ukraine troubling war is an international affairs analyst and a Sunday columnist with the nation's newspaper, Dr. Bola Adediran. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this latest attack happened while G7 leaders were holding a summit in Germany. It does seem like Russia was trying to pass a message to the leaders, do you think?
I suspect so, because more than 60 missile strikes were sent by Russian forces across Ukrainian cities over the weekend, in places as Kiev and in other Ukraine-controlled cities. So I suspect, as you've rightly mentioned, that the missile attack was deliberately targeted to make a statement and send a statement across to the G7 leaders who were meeting around that time. Let us not forget, obviously, that since Russia withdrew its forces from Kiev a couple of months ago, there have been minimal attacks against Kiev. But this attack against Kiev on Sunday and also against a shopping mall in another city in Ukraine are quite disheartening, because non-combatant civilians are being targeted indiscriminately.
There have been several sanctions against Russia since this invasion began, and that was meant to ensure that the desire and ability of Russia to wage a war against Ukraine wanes. But that has not happened. Do you think that the sanctions have created the expected effect?
Well, sanctions are obviously having some effect on Russia. We've seen that, I think this last week, there were indications that Russia defaulted for the first time in a long while, probably in a century, defaulted on global repayments for its the loans that it took. And that obviously is not good for Russia. On the one hand, let's just say that, let's also say that Russia has disagreed with that characterization, that it's defaulted on its loans, and that it's giving cash repayment, but that has been rejected. But there are indications, obviously, that Russia is reeling from the effects of sanctions. But to what extent, as we've mentioned several times here before, to what extent can those sanctions really impact on Russia's planned aggression in other parts of Ukraine and probably other parts of the Balkans region? That is yet to be seen, because obviously Russia has strategic interests and strategic goals that it wants to meet at all costs.
And this attack drew swift condemnation from the G7 leaders. And I just want to take one of the comments coming from President Macron, who spoke on behalf of the leaders. He said that the leaders will continue to support Ukraine and maintain sanctions against Russia. And he said, for as long as necessary. And I'm staying on that phrase, for as long as necessary. How long do you think that the support for Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia will continue?
I think it would definitely be as long as necessary, as Macron has mentioned. I think it would be difficult to imagine that Western leaders back out at some point. Of course, how long will this be? No one knows. But it would be really sad if Western leaders have pushed Ukraine and have supported it thus far, and suddenly begin to experience some kind of fatigue and mission creep, and begin to withdraw from supporting Ukraine. So I see the possibility that they will support as long as possible. But again, I think we're getting to a point where this war is becoming sort of a drudge, a slow moving war where no one decisively really wins, because even if Russia manages to capture the whole of the Donbas region, Luhansk and Donetsk, there is likelihood that there would be insurgent attacks against Russian interests in those regions. We've seen that Russian officials have been assassinated in the city of Kherson last week, where some officials were targeted by local insurgents. So you would see insurgency become the order of the day once Russia has managed to capture Luhansk and Donetsk. And so this war, even if Russia manages to achieve its strategic objectives, this war is far from over. And I sense that what we probably see is that there will be a different approach to fighting the war. And we might even see Russia begin to think of whether it wants to recapture Kiev and move back to the south and begin to move back towards the mission that it failed to meet earlier in the year, which is capturing Kiev. So this war is far from over, and there is a great sense that the Western leaders have no choice but to continue to support Ukraine, really.
International affairs analyst and Sunday columnist with the nation's newspaper, Dr. Bola Adediran. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much.